So, hi and welcome to one of the solo ITSO podcasts, which I'm going to start trying to do a bit more often, trying to keep it sports related. You can see from the title, there's been a lot of discourse recently about what Ange said post Spurs City match, and this is the day before the final day of the season. Now, firstly, I'm going to give a little bit of a reaction to being at the game. It was a very weird atmosphere. I must admit, I did take part in some of the chanting, and it stuck out to me that the chanting was very much aimed at Arsenal. We didn't care about City. City was sort of the villain, but not the main villain. Much like when you're watching a Marvel movie and there's a villain, but the main villain is Thanos, right? So City were a villain because they were the opponents, but they were also like a anti-hero type villain, because essentially the ultimate villain for us as Spurs fans, and rightly so given our rivalry, was Arsenal. So anything we can do to sort of get rid of Arsenal and lower their chances, we were going to do it. Now, there's a lot of discourse, but I want people to actually understand that other than a win, nothing would have been good enough. And even with a win, so if we had won that game, let's say, then we would be on 65 points. And I've got the table here. So we would have been on 65 points, and Villa are on 68 points. We would have been on we'd have been on 66 points, and Villa are on 68. So we still had to rely on Villa losing their final game and us having a win to actually get Champions League position. So that's only if we won, and that's the only outcome where we even had a chance of Champions League. And like Ange had said at the beginning of the season, top 4 is not a trophy. Playing in the Champions League is not a trophy. And also, quite honestly, I don't think we are at the stage in our development as a club to challenge for Champions League and challenge on the Premier League front. I think we need an extra season. We need to bolster our squad. That's part 1. Now, part 2. Essentially, people are saying, oh, Son missed a huge chance. They could have gotten a draw out of the game. And what would have that done for us? If we got a draw, then what? We'd give Arsenal the league, essentially. And we don't get Champions League. So a draw is completely pointless. A draw is only beneficial to Arsenal. So why would we want that? That's part 2. That's the second point. You can tell I'm getting a bit more irate because I've been hearing all of these narratives, and that's what's making me more irate. It's like, I don't understand, especially neutral fans, why you don't understand that I don't care what you, and especially I don't care about what Arsenal fans think. Like, why would I care about what you guys want for our club? You don't have our interests at heart. You don't care about Spurs. You don't care about what our success is. All you care about is your own club, rightly so. But equally, why would we care? Why would we care what our biggest rival, Arsenal, want for our club? And the fact, you know what? You think it's a small club mentality that we want to lose so you don't win the league? Is it not also a bit cringe and a bit weird that you want, like, your fans started supporting our fans or supporting our team just so that we can benefit you? Is that not a little bit of like, oh, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Well, our enemy is you guys. So Man City are our friends. Now, with that being said, to be a bit more neutral, and yes, this is going to be a rant type podcast. It's not really a podcast, it's just me talking into a camera. But on that front, I will say that it does go a bit too far. And the Spurs fans doing the Poznan, I think that was a bit too far and quite cringe. I'm not supporting City. I am just against Arsenal. So if you watch any of the chants that I took part in, and I'll admit it's partly because you're at the home end and you're not going to take part in the chanting. We literally saw an Arsenal fan who was there. Brave guy, by the way, but also, why are you there in an Arsenal top? Clearly, like, you know, in the home end. Weird guy. It's like you were asking for trouble, but he got bullied out of the stadium. Now, I don't think if you didn't take part in the chants, you'd have been bullied out of the stadium, but that's by the by. We took part in the chanting, but most of the chanting was basically aimed at Arsenal. I wasn't supporting City. It was chants that support Spurs or derided Arsenal. And I agree with Ange on this. I do think it's a small club mentality to be so focused on Arsenal, because ultimately, I want to focus on Spurs, and I want us to focus on our development and our future and our potential winnings in the future. But right now, that's not where we're at. We're at the end of the season. We have nothing to play for. We're almost guaranteed top 5. And getting on to that, we're in top 5. So, other than Villa, who have a higher wage bill than us, other than Villa, everyone above us, did we really think, or did anyone in the whole country think Spurs would end up where they are now, given the summer we had? We had a new manager who'd never managed in the Premier League or in a top league. Although he had like success in the Scottish League and he had success in the Australian League and maybe Japanese League, I can't remember exactly. But although he had that, he'd never managed in any of the top 5 leagues in Europe. Okay? We just sold our most prolific and star player in Kane to the Bundesliga. And we didn't replace him with a star striker or have a marquee signing. Although we did spend a lot. So given that, the fact that we're 5th and we're above Manchester United and Chelsea and Newcastle, 2 out of 3 of which were in Champions League positions last season. So we've overtaken them. And the only team that you could argue that we're behind is Villa, that we're surprised about, but also bear in mind, Villa have Unai Emery, who has managed in the Premier League, has won silverware on a European and domestic level, and has also managed our rivals, Arsenal. I think your fan base might have forgotten that. Other than him, we're behind Arsenal, Man City, and Liverpool. Is that surprising to you guys? Is that like something that you guys thought, oh, you guys should be above us? Because if that is, then great. Thanks, guys. You guys believe that much in us. I mean, I didn't personally think that, we were going to be, after less than a full season under a new manager with losing our star striker, that we would be above you guys. But the fact that you guys think we should be, thank you very much. Like, quite honestly, I just don't understand a lot of these, like, fans of, like, especially fans of, like, rival clubs, like, oh, you guys have a small club mentality. Okay. Small club mentality meaning what? We only think we're one of the top 5 teams in the league because we are one of the top 5 leagues in the team, and that we want to be better next season. Now, ultimately, I think the comments that Ange made, especially when he noticed the Spurs fans doing the City celebration, I think the timing was bad, but I like what he said and I like his mentality. He's basically a manager who's focused on winning, and that's the manager's job. Right? The manager's job is not to be a fan of the club. It would be great if you were a fan of the job, but if you're emotional, much like Spurs fans and Arsenal fans, that's why we're not the managers, right? We're here to back the club, to back the team, and ultimately, we're not there to sort of make them win. That's the manager and the player's job. And I would say we gave City a very good game. Nobody, you know what has come out of it? Nobody's come out of that game thinking Spurs didn't even try. Apart from the Son chance, which, people miss one-on-ones all the time. You don't expect it from Son, but he's not in a great run of form. Our past 4 games have been, Liverpool away, City at home, Arsenal, and I think Newcastle. So basically, all the other top clubs in the league, like, that was our run-in. That is a ridiculous run-in. Regardless of that, we basically gave the game a good go. We played really well, and it's very positive for our future. Like, even when, and you know what? That's why I agree, and not agree. I like what Ange said, and I like his mentality, because he approached that game with a winning mentality. He wants to win the game, and that's what a manager should do. They should want to win the game, and the players backed him and played their best, and we had a great game, and we lost 2-0, but that was to a last minute penalty, so we really lost it 1-0 in my mind. So we lost the game 1-0 after a competitive, tight game. Now, if you take the context out of it, and let's say this game happened midway through the season, right at the beginning of the season, nobody would have batted an eyelid. So obviously it's the context that matters, and in context, we played a solid game. We lost, so that's to look forward to the future. It's like we can give them a good game, even though we're not where we're supposed to, we're not where we want to be in the future. so great. And everyone's bought into Ange's mentality, great. We lost the game and we've sort of fucked over Arsenal. Even better, to be honest. You know what? Like, to me, this was almost a perfect game, other than the fact that as a fan we had to kind of hope that, like, quite honestly, look, especially after a 0-0 half time, if we had scored first, I think we would have wanted to win the game. But the fact that we went behind meant that the amount of effort, do you know, like, think of it this way, it's much easier to lose a game than to win a game, obviously. And not only that, but if we had drawn level, like I said earlier in this video, we'd have only given Arsenal the league without gaining any benefit. Like, why would we harm ourselves by helping you guys, and also help you guys? Like, that makes no sense. By also working harder, like, I don't know if you guys have watched Rory Jennings on his interview with Talksport. He basically said that if it were Chelsea in that position, and I respect him for this, he was like, let's put out the under-17 squad. Let's go. Let's lose 22-0. And, like, that's not my mentality, but, like, we gave it a good go. We gave it a fair go, and we came out behind. And you know what? I'm not happy about losing, but I will make peace with the fact that despite losing, there's still benefits from it. It's like one of those weird situations where losing's not the worst thing in the world. Now, ultimately, I think that the disconnect in this situation is between Ange Postecoglou's upbringing in an Australian Aussie sports culture, which is a very positive, everybody kumbaya, Hakuna Matata, let's play, have a really good game, let's put our all into it, but ultimately at the end of the game we've given it our all and then we'll all go have a beer afterwards. But that's not British culture. That's not British sports culture. British sports culture is a big fuck you to your rivals. And quite honestly, there's no world where, like, you know, you give it a good go and against Arsenal and you're going to have a beer with the Arsenal AFTV people afterwards. I doubt it. Now, ultimately, that's at the extremes, obviously. My best friend, like, Julian, is an Arsenal fan, so, you know, that sounded a bit like, you know, anyways, don't let that go too far. But essentially, ultimately, the rivalry is what instills and ultimately what makes the atmosphere in a stadium, right? Like, that's the next thing I want to get to. I think the disconnect that Ange had is the same emotion and passion we show to hate Arsenal fans is the same emotion that fills those seats that pay for the stadium, that pay the players' wage bills. Like, us turning up every single game. I say us, I've only gone to a few because I don't have that much time or money, but ultimately us turning up is driven by our passion for the club. And you can't have passion all good, right? The same passion that has given us so many last minute equalizers and winners is the same passion that goes towards hating Arsenal. So that's kind of the foundation of the club. So I wouldn't call that fragile. However, I would call that that's erratic. So and what I mean by that is we need something like the Pep sort of approach, and I'm hoping that's what you can provide, Ange. Like, you're never going to watch this, but ultimately I want you to provide that Pep, calm, we're going to win this game, we're going to play this style, these are these transfers I want, this is the formation I want to play. That's your job, and I agree with that, and our fan base will get behind you 100% when you're winning. This is just one of those freak situations where your fan base, the passion that is there for our love for our club, is nearly matched by our hatred for Arsenal. And on top of that, quite honestly, it was that kind of, like, I think when you approach any task, you need to prioritize. You need to see what's your top priority, what's your second priority, what's your third priority. And when we went into the game, I would say keeping the chance for a Champions League spot and stopping Arsenal winning the title were about neck and neck. They were about even. Soon as we went 1-0 down, I didn't cheer that much, but the feeling was, okay, we're 1-0 down. We have to accept that. We're 1-0 down. Suddenly, getting Champions League, the chance of that, down here. So we don't really care about this right now. The only thing we care about is, because essentially, ultimately, having gone 1-0 down, even if we drew level, we're still not getting Champions League, right? So the only thing we can prioritize now is making sure Arsenal don't win the league. Now, the players obviously don't care about that because they're still playing and that's their profession and that's why we support them. And Ange doesn't care about that because obviously, again, that's his job, that's his profession. He should win. But the fan base want to make sure that, hey, let's not let's make sure that Arsenal know that we're not helping them win the league. I don't see why that's such a big problem or a big hoopla is happening about this, because it's like, obviously that would happen. And the example is like, so obviously Rory Jennings has said that. I would say, if any Liverpool or Manchester United fans, if you are in the same situation now, the situation's not if you win, you stop the other team winning the league, right? Because that means you need to try hard, and like I said, winning is harder than losing. But the situation is very much Manchester United. Imagine this season, right? Imagine Liverpool are still fighting for the league, and but Liverpool are in Arsenal's position, and the only other team that is sort of pushing for it, I'm not even going to put one of your rivals, because obviously United have a long history and they're a big club, quote unquote, they're a big club, right? So imagine it was, I don't know, the season Leicester were on the top of the league. You have no rivalry with Leicester, you don't particularly care. Now, if you beat Leicester, you give Liverpool the league. Man United fans, you tell me, would you really want to beat Leicester to give Liverpool the lead? And Liverpool fans, same the other way. Would you really want to beat Leicester to give Man United the league if it's a tight race and that you basically have nothing to play for? Really? Do you really think that's true? Like football is not a FIFA game. It's not like an EA or EAFC game, right? There's emotion attached to it, and the rivalry plays into it. If it was just a computer game, if it was just like an emotionless game, then who cares? Ultimately, sport is about entertainment, and entertainment is driven by emotion and passion. So I don't understand why fans, especially, and this is the thing that is like, I think that most of this discourse and most of the comments on the TikTok that's blown up on our TikTok channel, like and follow by the way, most of that is just from Arsenal fans, because you guys have a big social media influence, and you guys whine so much that it's basically like people just love to watch you whine. And do you know why you guys are so popular? Because essentially people love to watch you guys lose. You know what? And it's not just Tottenham fans. A lot of fans would like to watch you guys lose. And do you know why? It's because you guys are sore losers, but you are even worse winners. Nobody ever wants to watch Arsenal win. Do you know why? Because you fans will never shut up. And you know what? If we had given you the league, do you really, really, really think that you would let us be like, oh yeah, thanks for that, and give us a handshake and just never mention it again, and never mention that you've won the league? No. We've had 100, 200 years worth of rivalry. We're not going to finish hearing about this for the next 200, 300 years. My children, my grandchildren, my grandchildren's grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, generations and generations down the line. Do you remember that time Tottenham gave us the league? That's what's going to play. And you know what? We didn't give that to you. So even if you guys do win the league and we lowered your chances, it wasn't us that gave it to you. And it's not even... Do you know what's even more nice? We didn't give. Not only did we not give it to you, we even did it fairly. We tried hard in the game. We just ultimately lost to the current champions, the current treble holders. I feel like that's not too far. And ultimately, the last thing I want to mention, and the last thing I have a note on, is Son. I know you're never gonna watch this, but Human Son, you're my favorite player in the world, and I know you had that miss, and I know you really wanted to score. I never question your integrity, and I would say that I thank you for being such a great servant to our club, and I only hope you have an even better season next season. And I'm so glad that you chose to join Tottenham, because you've got the Korean fan base. And if you guys have watched the TikTok and the short of the Korean fan that we interviewed, he understands it. And the reason why I love Son is because we've got the Korean fan base, and you know what the Korean fan base understand? They understand passion. He hates Arsenal, despite only being a Spurs fan for probably a fairly short amount of time since Son has joined. He hates Arsenal, and he understands that. and I love that we have that fan base, and I love every single like Spurs fan who understands that passion. Okay, and ultimately, Ange, I like what you said. I disagree with it. You're wrong. You're wrong from a fan's perspective. You're correct from a manager's perspective. So I back you, Big Ange. I hope you have a good summer window. I hope we have a good final day of the season and we sort of can get a win and guarantee our fifth spot. And I hope we have a good Europa League campaign next season. And I hope that we get some silverware, which is always the hope. And you know what? I'm coming out of the season positive and hoping for the best next season, not miserable like the end of last season. And at least we have a manager who is not going to just hopefully, you know, like touch wood before like this happens, but I hope we have a manager who genuinely has the club's best interests at heart. So I back you, Big Ange. And to the rest of you guys, if you're not a Tottenham fan, if you're not a Spurs fan, don't care what you think really, but I like your engagement. So, you know, comment down in the comments below, give me the small club comments that I'm going to hear. But yeah, peace.